Hi, everyone. This is Mike Gonzalo. Welcome to the Move More, Learn More podcast. Today, our guest is Nick Clement from Wales. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lynn Kenny.
Oh, we are so happy to have you here, Nick, in our Move More, Learn More community. So, we all met on LinkedIn through our mutual friends, and Nick has an amazing story. He runs an award-winning program in Wales to help children move more so that they can learn better. He's a multi-sport athlete himself. And Nick, why don't you tell us a little bit about your program and how this all came to be?
Yeah, so I started back in college with a sports science background, then became a primary school teacher, was teaching for about 10 years in a very underprivileged area in one of the valleys here in South Wales. Faced quite a lot of difficulties. So there was poor behaviour. I was being hit at, sworn at on a regular basis, difficulties with parents. And one day, enough became enough. And I spoke to my wife one night and said, tomorrow I'm going to hand in my notice. And she was a bit taken back, but I think we both knew that it was going to be the right decision, but we didn't have a plan. There was always supply teaching to fall back on, but obviously it was never going to be the same amount of money that we were currently making. So I went in the next day, handed in my notice, and I think the head teacher was glad in a way because I became a teacher that I wasn't. I became somebody that was going through the motions. I lost the love of it, and I really found it difficult at that time. So yeah, handed in my notice, did a little bit of supply teaching, and it was just after COVID, so around the end of 2021, 2022. And I realized when I was going into these different schools, and I kind of realized anyway with what I was doing with teaching in that underprivileged area, that the children were really lacking in confidence. They were extremely anxious. So created a company called Confident Healthy Individuals, cognitive brain therapy and mindfulness. I was always intrigued about, and I wanted to find out more and did more research. And it became part of my practice to be able to control my emotions and regulate myself. So I decided to create fun, engaging projects that were centered around brain science and getting children moving, holistic education, cognitive brain therapy, mindfulness, drama, and performing. So how can we put children in fun situations where they have to be confident and they have to perform and they have to do things that are a bit out of their comfort zone? A little bit of exposure therapy, but then in a very nice way. And that was been running for 4 years. We won multiple awards. And then I've noticed recently, the last year and a half, whereby we were talking to ourselves, my wife and I, and realized that children are moving far less now than they ever were. My wife was made redundant as well from the same school, so she was knocked for six. Didn't know what she wanted to do. Didn't really want to go into supply because it became extremely difficult with the behaviour issues. So we created Confident, Healthy, Active Me, which is a bit of a mouthful. We're looking to change it possibly. And that is centered all around getting children moving in a variety of different ways. So we are open working with anybody we possibly can to get children moving and possibly families moving as well. So that's been going for a year and a half. And as you said earlier, we recently won two awards in our first awards ceremony.
What does it look like? So you've got your active assemblies programs, you've got a bunch of different programs. I want you to take us to Wales. What does this look like? Give us an example.
So active assembly. So in Wales here, we have assemblies anyway. So it might be singing, it might be a story, and that means all the children congregate in the hall. So we might have 200, 300 children at a time, sometimes a lot more in some of the larger schools. But an active assembly is using that hall space, and we have done it with up to 300 children. We do a little chat to begin with. It might be about nutrition, it might be about growth mindset, it might be a little bit to do cognitive brain therapy. It's a different theme each time. But the main part of it is a 15 to 20 minutes high energy movement session for the entire school, or it can be for the younger ones and the juniors. And the idea is we increase their heart rate, so high intensity interval training. We participate in an exercise or activity for 30 seconds without stopping. Then we have a 30-second break, and then we repeat it 5 or 6 times, or sometimes I might push it seven or 8 times, depending on the kind of fitness level of the children. So we try to get children breathing harder, moving more, taking part together, building confidence, and hopefully helping them be ready for the rest of the day. Most of the time that we'll do these assemblies will be first thing in the morning.
And Nick, you mentioned that some of the children you've worked with past have confidence issue, they have anxiety issues. How have you seen programs like this, like your active assemblies, help with those two things specifically? What have you seen in students who are getting an opportunity to move more and move more socially, actually, and in a relational way?
Yeah, we always see children unwilling to participate, very anxious. We see it with the younger children that we're dealing with as well. And the idea is to gently get them involved. And if you do it in larger scales, like the active assemblies, and if we're looking at looking at drama, we tend to do it all together as a group rather than singling people out. And as you said, socially, then that feels a little bit better. And whenever we do kind of performance, it might be two or three groups perform at the same time rather than all eyes being on that one group, or the two that might be in pairs. So it's like slowly trying to bring that confidence out and not just throwing them in a deep end. And yeah, we've seen amazing results. I've been in classes where they've been crying when we first started and really didn't want to participate, to constantly then ask, "Oh, can I perform first? Can I do this? Can I do that?" So yeah, it's been huge changes in certain individuals.
I'm really struck as a pediatric psychologist by the mental health aspects of this, which I wasn't expecting. You seem pretty sophisticated in that regard. Where do you think the mental health pieces fit into what it is that you're teaching and doing?
Cognitive brain therapy and mindfulness are the two that I've really looked at, and growth mindsets. We try to weave that in to the different programs that we have because cognitive brain therapy really helped me and supported me in a difficult time. My stepdad, who's like a father to me, was my dad left when I was about 6 years old. My stepdad came in when I was about 8, 9 years old. He passed away 7 years ago, and I found it extremely difficult. So I had to come up with something or find something that would support me, and cognitive brain therapy really helped. So I thought, well, if it's helping me, how
Mhm.
can I do this with children and how can I implement this in a fun way? So my philosophy behind it is very similar to the chimp paradox by Professor Stephen Peters, is explaining to children what is actually going on inside the head and that they are not their emotions. It is extremely difficult and it takes a long amount of time, but it's for them to understand that their first reaction isn't a human reaction. So I've tried to break it right down for them to understand where do they feel that anger, where do they feel that emotion, how do they feel those different emotions, and then what the triggers could be and the different ways they can counteract the chimp being in control rather than the human being in control.
Wow.
So, Nick, so far we've talked a lot about emotional pieces in all of this, anxiety, confidence, that kind of thing. So, what about the problem-solving piece with movement? I know you had a conversation online recently about that. What do you see how can movement be used to solve problems or have kids solve their own problems through physical activity?
I absolutely love kinesthetic learning, as you can imagine. And I know VAK has gone a little bit out of date recently, but I think children, especially younger children, learn best at that age and have the opportunities to make these problem solving decisions, such as how do I get over this? How do I get under this? How far do I need to throw this? What angle do I need to throw this at? What happens if I go here? What happens if I go this? What do I do if I change this element? What how do I throw it so it lands in this target? So sport is an excellent way of helping children problem solve that isn't something related just to pen and paper, because I think children at that age find abstract learning, seeing pictures and things on a piece of paper, very difficult, whereas sport and physical challenge actually things right in front of you. And I think that is so important that we give children those different opportunities.
Yeah, what I see in my work with teachers and what they report back, and just what I know is that stress levels, it's with the problem solving on one side and what movement, I'll say it this way, movement has a way of bringing you into the moment. You have to pay attention. And then stress levels lower because when you're mindful and you're paying attention, it's really hard to be stressed about anything else. Do you see benefits like that with the children you work with and the stress levels?
Yeah, completely. It's an opportunity for children to regulate themselves as well. I'm a firm believer that children shouldn't be sat down for long periods of time, especially younger ages, but even more so in higher key stage 2, 10, 11-year-olds. Sometimes we're asking them to sit for nearly 6 hours, 5 hours a day without any movement at all. And we know that their behavior is a form of communication. So if we have children who are wriggling and, getting agitated very easily, we know that they need to move and they need to move in a variety of different ways as well. So I think people are starting to begin to see that how important movement is, but we have a long way yet to have getting awareness of the actual importance of it and it not being an added value extra.
We're pretty fortunate with our Move More, Learn More community that they do buy into movement, but we do hear from them that sometimes their schools do not. And I wonder what are some concrete actions you could recommend to our colleagues here today that they could start today and use forever if they are kind of running up against some barriers bringing movement into their schools?
I would say a practical place to start is to build consistent movement moments into the day. So not just thinking that it's going to be a PE session. So it's trying to look at how can we make it inclusive by design. So offer choices and levels so that all children can join in. So one thing that I love doing is going back to basics, using balloons and beach balls because they're slower, easier to track, help children build more confidence and have a more positive experience. And it doesn't involve lots of different equipment. I think a lot of practitioners that I've met are not very confident in being able to deliver kind of PE style sessions, but you don't need to deliver those. You just need to start really small and think, right, let's go back to basics. Let's get children looking at sport and movement in a positive way and then working forward from that then and thinking, okay, what's the next part? How do we progress this going forward? But something I love is just trying to include movement in your daily routine, such as transition times, making sure that if you're sat on the carpet for 10 minutes, we get up and we do star jumps or little dances. It's just been a bit more mindful, sorry, of how you can incorporate movement and when you need to incorporate movement if you know you're going to be sat down for long periods of time.
Beautiful. You just brought me back to a memory. When I was 10 years old, I was at a tennis camp and I was extraordinarily coordinated and I danced a lot of my life, but I was really slow, like slow as a turtle. And therefore, I was often one of the last people chosen in PE class. And I was at this tennis camp, and you're reminding me of this counselor. And so we ran, and I was way behind everybody else. And this counselor, let's say I was 10, so let's say he was 18, came out and ran with me the rest of the way.
Yeah, that's
And
nice.
it was so beautiful. And then years later, Dr. Ed Shafransky at Pepperdine was lecturing in our doctoral program, and he said, you only need one kernel of humanity to improve your entire life. And I flashed back to that experience. And I'm feeling right now really moved because I know that you are being a kernel to thousands of children in Wales who need your support. And we really would like to bring more of your programs to America. Mike Magera, when I posted on LinkedIn, Magera wrote, I use some of Nick's programs. So how can we bring you here? Are there books? Are there online tools that we can use?
Yeah, so I have two websites, which is chiEducation.co.uk and that's CHI education.co.uk. And our other one is a bit easier. It's confidentactive.com. So we currently have a program called Move Able, which was called Confident Active before, but after some consultation, we realized that practitioners needed lots of support with children with ALN, additional learning needs.
Right.
So we've incorporated in that movement stories, the transition times, as I mentioned earlier, what to do if you have those spare 5 to 10 minutes you need to get children moving. And we work with settings looking at how they can weave movement into play and their routines rather than it being just a one-off session. So we have the website, we have some videos, and more importantly, we have the movement stories, which I absolutely love, and I've really simplified them. So you would literally open up the story. There's hardly any pictures or illustrations on there because the idea isn't for the children to see the book. But you read out the story, the practitioner does the movements, and then the children have the opportunity to do the movements as well. So we'll have different themes like dinosaurs, rugby, space. And the idea is that it can fit into that settings theme, or they can do as standalone. And it's the basic version, so it's very inclusive with little to no equipment. And the idea is then the practitioner can make it as hard or as easy as they want. And that comes with a guide and also cool down activities as well.
Beautiful.
And Nick, and I've been thinking a lot about parents. We have parents listening to this podcast right now. So, what would you tell a parent? Because there needs to be support in school, of course, with teachers. I think they understand it a little bit more. It's what they do. They probably had professional development, have read books, etc. But maybe parents haven't. If you had a parent in front of you and they're wanting to get their kid more active and just getting them moving more and appreciating more, what would you tell them? What steps would you ask them to take?
I think it's extremely difficult in the current climate that we're in because of the cost of living crisis and parents working more and the technology age that we're in as well. It's very easy to give your child technology to keep them occupied, as well as us constantly looking at our phones. So the first advice I'd give is to try and be a role model. So be positive about movement, getting outside, even when it's cold or raining, and always start with small steps. If you think, oh, okay, I've got to go outside and play with my child for an hour or 45 minutes, then it's more daunting. So instead, think, okay, we're going to go outside for 5 minutes, we're going to do a little something, and then we might come back in. So something that I do, I'm very fortunate that I have two boys, 5 and 7. They're only 2 years gap between them. So I'll start a challenge with them, and I'll create the challenge. I'll participate for a couple of minutes, and then I'll just sneak away, and I allow them then to be able to carry on the challenge or adapt it, and then they can add rules and make it competitive if they want to. So it's just about getting that start going as well. As I said earlier with the practitioners, it's don't start too high and think, okay, we're going to start catching rugby balls, footballs, American footballs. Start with balloons and beach balls and slowly bring up your child's confidence and positive opportunities to improve their hand-eye coordination and play games that are very easy that you can do in the house that probably is not going to break anything as well. So yeah, I'd say to start with just those two things, be a positive role model and really simplify the different skills that are involved with whatever it is that you're trying to teach your child.
Well, Mike, now we have new tools to add to our equipment lists. I'm going to do it
Yes,
today. So
Grace.
we've come to a close here, Nick. Thank you so much for joining us. It's only 7 in the morning in Arizona, and there are very few people I would prefer to talk with than you in Wales and Mike in Pennsylvania. So for our Move More, Learn More community, we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for being here.